Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Neck of the Woods. I am Ward 1 candidate Jacob McGregor. As usual, I am here with my co-host Jason Diodati, and today we have another guest to talk about the 2021 election here in Calgary, Mr. Derek Williams from Ward 7. Derek, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me on the show. Like I said earlier, it's always a pleasure to chat with fellow candidates and engage in some civic conversation. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all, sir.
Thanks for joining us.
Talk about. So today at the budget and finance sort of committee at City Hall, there was a talk about the capital project budget. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the big projects, the event center, the Greenline, things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those are two projects that will have, an immense impact on our city's future. I guess we start with the Greenline. I think it's if the federal and provincial governments can keep their promises of funding, the Greenline is a no-brainer, and I think the shovels should have been in the ground already. And I think public transportation is the backbone of not only livable cities but a sustainable city of the future. And people need to be able to get around and connect to all areas of Calgary, and this train is one that accomplishes that, I think. And as we look to the future, if we hope to attract a diverse economy to our downtown core, we need to have a top tier transit system like other great cities do. I mean, the Greenline's a no-brainer in my books.
People listening to the show lately might think we would rename it from Your Neck of the Woods to Greenline Talk, because this project has sort of become a running theme lately.
You know what, Jacob?
Do you have any thoughts on, because right, and me and Jason have talked about this before, it's sort of this amorphous, massive infrastructure project, and everybody's got a thought on the route it should take and the
design,
role and the size and how it should be phased. What are your thoughts on this whole debate?
Well, I think the proposed alignment that the council agreed on last time is the correct one. I would have preferred it to go under the bow myself.
And under the boat. That's a couple we should keep a tally of this, Jace.
Yeah, we've heard that. Absolutely. Keep going. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off there, Derek.
No, yeah, I would have preferred it to go under the bow. I mean, it might not have been responsible, I know, with water table and stuff like that, but going over it's completely fine to me. But I think that if we were to start in the south, bring it to the city center, and make sure it gets to 16th Avenue in the first leg, that is where we're going to find maximum ridership. Service the communities that are going to use that train, and it's going to transform the way that we view that Center Street and 16th Avenue hub. I mean, that 16th Avenue hub is going to be probably the busiest section of that train line once it is completed. I think maybe up north, I can't really see the future, but I think it's 2035 was when they expect to complete the train up way up north there. But I mean, that 16th Avenue hub seems to be kind of where we need to get to make this train make a ton of sense to connect people, really. And what was your other question? You said that it was the alignment, and what was else?
The phase. You've touched on a lot of it. The phasing, the idea of under over the bow, like all the flood mitigation stuff. I wanted to touch on the whole ridership aspect, because me and Jason have talked about this before, about
I was just gonna say,
what kind
yeah,
of bounce in ridership you think we're going to see post-COVID. Because I think you might get a bit of an immediate bounce, but then it might be slow to get up to levels where this big infrastructure project makes sense.
well, and that was the, not to cut you off there again, Derek.
No,
I'm
no,
so
go ahead.
sorry,
No, no.
but that's exactly what, you know, and that's, you know, it's exactly what we talked about, Jacob, and that was your position, and my side was more the idea that the argument stands that while there might be reduced labor needs on that line now that there is a lot more integration of at-home work, what Jacob and I were kind of talking about was the idea that I think that there's going to be a massive spike in just social use, right? Getting to the downtown core, getting to areas of the city so you can hang out with your friends. Again, in a world, we kind of played this hypothetical game of, if we were in this world where COVID has now been fixed and solved and there's no concern, where we don't no longer have to wear masks, whether through an act of God or whether through the ever so sought after vaccines, you know, what will happen. And so my take is that there will, I think, be an immediate and sustained high demand for a super accessible transit line like the Greenline, and just in general ridership of the C train, I think, will go up. And Jacob was kind of, his counter, and it was a very good counter, is even once that day may or may not come, let's pretend it does, are people going to be comfortable, right? Still traveling in such close quarters like a train immediately? Will it take years? So yeah, you know, not to, that was a really long-winded interruption, but please, Derek, what are your thoughts? What, if you had to, you know, forecast a trend, what do you see?
Well, I think the initial forecast were 65,000 riders per day on the initial leg of the Greenline, and
Okay.
let's not forget that this is a north-south train. This is kind of a train we don't typically have. I mean, it's looking to take some ease off traffic congestion on Deerfoot Trail and stuff like that. You know, coming all the way up north. I mean, the north and south feel like they're separate cities at times. You know, and if you can you can get all the way straight from, you know, 16th Avenue down to Chinook or into the southeast there, I think it's important to connect those cities. Or those communities.
The system, yeah, absolutely. Do you see, like, I mean, let's play that game post COVID, in a world where we now no longer have to wear masks, or where, you know, again, we don't have restrictions. Do you see an immediate jump?
This train line's not going to be built until COVID is completely.
No. Of course. It was more hypothetical over anything else. Like, yeah, we're not going to see, like you said, 2035 is when is when we're going to see the north side, you know, completed. My guess is that we won't see anything until about 10 years from now, for sure.
Do you guys take transit?
For sure. I haven't taken transit regularly for maybe 2 or 3 years. I do take it from time to time, but for the last 2 or 3 years, I have not been. To be completely frank,
I live right next to the Red Line station in Tuscany, so if I do need to get downtown or across the city, I often am taking the Red Line. But yeah,
so I think that the commuter aspect of getting downtown right now, we've seen a drastic drop in ridership. But when you take the train, like I do sometimes, to get places here and there, like I went downtown to get my vaccine the other day, and, you know, people.
Nice, congratulations.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah,
we can stay safe together, Calgary.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? People were trying to stay socially distanced on the train, you know, say one person per seat, but that train was very packed. Like it was a busy train. And, you know, that's something that I don't think is going to go away anywhere. People often forget that public transit is for those people that necessarily don't have enough money or can drive or anything like that, right? Often the forgotten or the quieter people in our communities are the ones that don't have their voices heard. So these train lines and public transportation is built for them, you know, and that's who we really have to think about.
And that's exactly that. And Jacob and I think have agreed. And you know, we've mentioned that in previous episodes. The idea that, like, we are, to be clear, I think we're both pretty pro Greenline for that reason. I think Jacob can attest that, through experience, that yet there is demand and there needs to be better infrastructure so that there is more room for wheelchairs, for strollers, so that people can actually enter the train and sit and not feel like they're, in the other person's personal space, right?
Yeah.
So no, I agree with you 100% there, Derek. It's the quieter people in the community, who are taking these, and they're not as, for whatever reason the data suggests, they're not as likely to engage, and we all need to be kind of the advocate for them.
And great cities have great transportation. And if we hope to be a great city of the future, we need to have the transit system, the top tier transit system to move people around like a great city can.
And it's interesting, you mentioned traffic congestion as another factor. We had that sort of aspect thrown in last episode with Kabir Najir from Ward 3, where if you want to make the traffic problems easier, this is another way to help that.
Absolutely. And let's not forget that all of the C trains and LRTs in Calgary are completely powered by the wind. So it's a climate friendly alternative to driving cars around, so it's kind of a win-win in a lot of different scenarios for everyone.
Would you, absolutely, Derek, would you say that there is something to be said about how amorphous this project is? Do you think if you were a member of council that you would advocate for a little bit more, maybe not concrete, but a little bit more visualization for those in the city who might be opposed to the project, or even those maybe on a provincial level, or even on a federal level for funding, who might be apprehensive, or if they're reconsidering or they want to renegotiate their position? Would you be someone, I know that's a very black and white question, but do you think that do you see yourself advocating for a little bit more visualization on the project?
You know what? I think the city released some data the other day, last week, saying that 90% of Calgarians are in support of the Greenline, or 89% or something like that. So
right,
I think the people that we're hearing the most are the very loud minority of people that are against this line. And if, like I said, if the federal and provincial governments can get their funding in line, this train is a no-brainer. So like, I'm kind of the party that says, like, shovels should have been in the ground. Costs are just increasing as time goes by. The more that we stall this project, the more likely it's going to be, and the more likely it's going to be canceled.
Absolutely. Jacob and I were speaking about that as well. As do we delay it with in consideration of COVID even further? Again, we've spoken about that this is not going to be a reality, anytime in the near future. But even still, considering COVID, do we see an even further pushback? And my argument against it was, no, I don't think that's prudent on the basis of cost, and maybe potentially, and to your point, I hadn't even thought of that, potentially is the lack of interest from those who are funding this project as we stand.
Stall tactics like these are classic tactics used by special interests in government groups to stop projects in their wake, because people get fatigued from talking about it, fatigued from everything, and the project usually ends up getting canceled. And that's something we can't let happen to this. So we need to keep on fighting for this green line, because it's the people, the train line for the people, and we need to make it happen.
Now,
awesome.
Let's get a little philosophical then, because you mentioned the whole idea of these interest groups and a lot of what a lot of people would call a loud minority that often have fiscal concerns. And I'll be honest, I hear a lot from them saying this isn't going to help me directly, so why should I care about it?
That is the definition of cynicism, though. That is the definition of cynicism. Self-interest and only doing it for yourself, and having that negative view, like, this isn't going to go anywhere, this is going to help people, especially myself. We can't let ourselves fall into that.
Okay.
That's not what the vast majority of Calgarians feel. And you know what? Go ahead. Yeah.
In addition to that cynicism argument, I'd also like to hear your argument for the people that say you can't balance being fiscally responsible with building these major capital projects?
Well, I mean, of course you can balance that. I mean, it's the city councils and city administration's job is to make sure that we have the money to deliver services that Calgarians expect while supporting and investing in capital projects for the future. I mean, operationally, year over year, we know the city isn't allowed to run at a deficit for its operational budget, obviously. But when you look at a capital budget, it's usually 5, 8 to 10 years long. They have a debt ceiling that they're allowed to go within, and with both the big projects that we want to talk about here moving forward, there might be only a little wiggle room between the set debt limit and actual debt incurred. But Calgary needs investment now more than ever to build the Calgary of the future, and it's okay to be cautious and nervous about spending because plans change, pandemics happen.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
But I think the rewards outweigh the risks, and I'm willing to bet on Calgary to see it through to make sure that this is the right move for the city in the future. And you know what? Now let's hope we can just count on the other orders of government to follow through and have that same positive outlook on Calgary.
There are so many moving parts to this, and I think that is something sometimes that we lose sight of, is that council is the face of this. They're the ones that have to wear it, but there is this intergovernmental relationship that sort of makes this go.
100%. And I think the train line was greenlit under the NDP government and the Liberal government, right?
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And you know what? I think when one government makes a promise to a municipality or a city, that the following government needs to hold true on that promise.
Their responsibility, right? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the honorable thing to do, right? Is to honor the previous, because you'd hope that in the reverse, that's what you would have happen if a different regime were to take over, or a different party were to take over, right? That's what you would hope.
Yeah.
So no, it is interesting to see where this project's origins came from. Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned an investment. I want to get your opinion. Do you think Calgary right now is a good place to start a small business, and how we could potentially make that climate even better?
Yeah, loaded question, especially during a pandemic.
Yeah. Lots of struggle, obviously.
Hey, positive spin. At lease rates have never been better.
I was just gonna say,
you can find some incredible deals if you're looking for space in Calgary today. But yes, Calgary is a great place to start a business. I think there's an entrepreneurial spirit here. It's alive and well, and this is a resilient group of people that live here, and people are always looking out for one another and looking to support one another, and not only in their small businesses, but I know community leaders and business leaders are always looking to give a helping hand up, and I know the Calgary Chamber does a great job, and you know what, the city of Calgary has done a fantastic job in the wake of this pandemic to really make it easier to start a business more than ever. I mean, I was just told the other day that you can actually start a business completely online now for the first time anywhere in Canada, and that's here in Calgary. So
and
wow.
And there is we hearing a lot in the news about the emerging sort of tech companies and the new infrastructure that's being invested in. So I tend to be optimistic with you on that front, that there is a bounce back coming, maybe not to what we saw in the oil boom days, but potentially could be something more stable
Well, you talk about the oil boom days. When I was born in 1987, just under half of all of Calgary's businesses, like GDP, came from energy and oil and gas and resource sector. That's kind of switched in the last like 30 years or so to about 28% or 25%. I forget the number that I read the other day. And so we are diversifying our economy as we speak, and Calgary has an extremely business friendly climate. I mean, there's a reason that corporate head office is called Calgary home. And as we continue to diversify our economy, we're just going to become a stronger economic engine, like we always have been. I mean, we produce more per GDP than any other city in Canada, and we have one of the most educated populations. So it's an extremely viable place to start a business. And I think business climate wise, I read it somewhere, I think it was Forbes or something like that, that Calgary has the third best business case to start a business in North America.
So what is, on that note, what is something that you think that council might be, what's an opportunity for council right now to execute maybe better on that? Now, I know that these investments can sometimes come, from my understanding, on a provincial level, right? Because there's that Alberta tourism and branding and all that great stuff. And although we're talking about Calgary specifically, they do, from my understanding, look into those avenues. But is there an opportunity that you think that we're missing here on a municipal level to attract that business? Because again, the empty office, and I get it, we're in a pandemic, and that's the reality here. But these office towers have been empty for quite some time, right? Like they've been empty pre-pandemic. So my question becomes, what are we doing wrong, right? With those numbers, with those statistics, what do you think, where's the opportunity?
Well, it starts with, revitalizing our downtown and attracting a diverse economy there. I mean, that has to be a place where people want to move to, not only to work, but to live and to play. I mean, that's what the whole downtown revitalization has become, right? We need to transform our downtown outside of the 9 to 5, corporate way of life, and transform it into something that can sustain a vibrant community where small businesses want to open up downtown, that can open on Sundays, do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because a lot of restaurants, even pre-pandemic, aren't open on Sundays downtown because there's just not that traffic. It's a ghost town down there. So we need to transform it, because the sooner that we transform our downtown and have those extra train lines and add the vibrancy, we add some affordable housing, we transform some of those office towers into dwellings. I mean, there was a study done, I think last year, that there's about 25 to 28 different office towers that are ripe for conversion. So I mean, they can't all be affordable housing, and I know that would be a mistake for one to have it all be affordable housing or anything like that. But there has to be private investment looking to revitalize and transform our downtown into, like I said, a place where people can live and work and play. And with that comes the next generation of Calgarians that are going to open the businesses, work here, live here, start families,
Absolutely. And I think that what we're seeing right now are maybe the seeds that are being planted for that to happen, to attract that business. And hopefully with you two gentlemen on council, we can see that reality become a little bit quicker. But no, that's a fair answer. That has always been my question is, if there are, did you say, I know you were saying you read it, loosely the other day, but 23 of the towers available are ripe for conversion. Is that the number?
It was over 20. I think there was, they did
20 plus.
Yeah, it's 20 plus. They looked at, I think, 28, and there was, I think, 23 or 25 that were viable for conversion.
And is that something, I mean, I'll ask you the same thing, Jacob, and we'll let Derek go first. Is that something that you, as someone who's looking to become a member of council would advocate strongly for?
I absolutely 100%. I think it was the smartest move for the city to make the first steps into the affordable housing and revitalization of that first downtown tower into something that we can build a model after. You know, if the city can step up and do it and say, this is how we did it, this is how the numbers made sense for us, and they partnered with some private firms that want to do the same thing to make money and make sure it's a viable situation, then yeah, 100%. I think the city took the right first steps, and we need the private business community to follow suit and do the same thing. We can't do this by ourselves. The city can't be
Absolutely.
responsible for everything, right?
On my sort of answer to that, I'm gonna jump off where Derek started and say, look, we can't have these towers. We might be able to fill some of them, but we can't have dead space potentially. That's just wasted opportunities. So I do think it is a good route to go. I also think that we have to also look outside of the core when it comes to affordable housing and
100%.
look at some more densification and different kinds of mixed use housing in our neighborhoods where it makes sense.
You're completely right, Jacob. And you know what? I think to build a truly sustainable and diverse community, you have to have affordable housing mixed in with everything. You can't just have affordable housing downtown, or you just can't have it in the inner city. You can't just have it in the suburbs. It has to be in every single community to really build sustainable communities. They have to have different layers of socioeconomic values in it, right?
Yes. Now, and that sort of touches on this whole debate over the guide for local area planning and the guidebook for great communities.
You nailed it this time, man.
I personally didn't love the original document. I thought it was both a little too prescriptive and a little wishy-washy in its language. I think it works better and lives up to its name as more of an advisory document now than when it was supposed to be a statutory plan, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
The guidebook, like I've said this since I started my campaign, the guidebook is a plan for the future. And it's not a perfect document. It never was. And I don't think there is a one size fits all solution to revitalization and densification in communities, but there needs to be proper engagement, and not just with those that are willing to log into a Facebook Live or sit on the board of a community association. We need to get back into our communities as councillors, engage with people door to door, talk to people as much as we can to really get the sense of how people want their communities to grow, because people were upset about that guidebook, and rightly so. It was a one size fits all, and there wasn't proper engagement around it, I don't think. Well, that's how the community feels. That's how our communities feel.
The fact
I was going to ask,
the fact that a lot of people didn't learn about the guidebook until this year, with all the work that's gone into it, is pretty telling to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that communities feel like they weren't engaged properly when it's been, I want to say almost 5 years in the making, this guidebook, if I'm mistaken. I don't know.
Was it, yeah, Jacob, we talked about this. Was it 2016 or 2017 or something?
The first completed version was 2017, but the roots go back to
2016. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, people only really start to care about things when it affects them. So as we started to see more of these, basement suites, these R2 and multi-residential units going up in communities, people started to, feel the effects of it. And that's when they really started to care, I think. And that's when they got vocal. And you know what? yeah, should the city have maybe taken some extra steps to tell people how this guidebook and how their plans were going to shape the future of Calgary before it exploded? Probably.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
Yeah. And I'm just being honest here. I mean, I've talked to like hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the community so far, and everyone has their opinion, and it's a close race between people that are strongly against it and people that are strongly for it. Because people that are strongly for it see it as it's progress. You can't stop progress.
Right.
It's going to happen no matter what, because we can't have 50-foot lots in the middle of a downtown or an inner city community anymore. It just doesn't make sense.
And I will agree, it definitely was aspirational. It just didn't go about it the right way.
Yeah.
But it felt very prescriptive.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, there's not one size fits all. We need to engage with people in communities and see what areas are ripe for revitalization and what areas maybe we want to have character homes or community heritage areas and stuff like that. I think that will go a long way to preserving some of the heritage in our communities. And I live in one of the oldest communities in Calgary. And I live in an area that's been completely revitalized, almost like my entire street is almost all revitalized now, and I've seen the positive effects it can have on property values, on new families moving in, just on the community in general. You see kids at parks now where you didn't. I've lived here for 11 years, and when I moved here, the only kid at that park was mine.
Yeah.
And now that more families have moved in the last 10 years, we go there, we can start a new game of soccer. We played a game of soccer the other day with a family that was there, and it was great. It's nice to see the evolution of communities, because people think that revitalization is just going to tear everything down and it's all gentrification and stuff, but I think that done responsibly, and if we keep parts of our heritage and our communities alive, then we can make a plan for each community that's going to service the community well, and make sure that we take care of those that are, against the densification, and those that are for it.
Now we've talked a lot of policy meat so far, so I want to sort of get your opinion on something tangentially related to the campaign, but not necessarily policy. You're running to replace one of the longest serving councillors, Drew Farrell. Those are some big shoes to fill, whether you're one of the people, and I know both. Some really love Drew and some not so much. But what are your thoughts on potentially taking over this role from somebody that's served their community for so long?
You know what? I applaud Drew for serving the community for so long, and I think it's an amazing thing that she's done, and I can't say enough good things about people that choose to serve their community in the way that they do. I think sometimes that after a long tenure, that maybe you don't engage as much with the community. Yes. And that's, I think, is what happened in our sense here. I've spoken to a number of community associations that have said that, just getting a hold of them and getting their thoughts through was like anything that they said was falling on deaf ears. And that's what I hope to change as a counselor, is to engage with everybody, to hear everybody's opinions, and not just listen to them, but really hear what they have to say and be empathetic with their problems, and if they have solutions or whatnot, just to really engage with them and try to make them feel like their voice is being heard, because that's all that I think that we're missing on council.
Absolutely agree on that front. I've heard from so many people that say they feel very much taken for granted by the current council. I feel I have similar feelings with regards to the longer somebody's term goes, the maybe less they start to engage. That's been my experience with the counselor that I happen to be running against, and I'd like to, like you said, re-engage with my residents, my constituents, and make it a lot more of a conversation. That's why we do these kinds of things. It's a new way to get information out to people.
Yeah. You know what? You can't make everyone happy, and we know that. But you, as a counselor, you have to make the best informed choices in the interest of the community, and not, your individual interests. So,
Right.
that's I think is a key thing. Is people think that maybe the decisions being made weren't in the best interest of their community.
Absolutely. And yeah, it feels as though the politicization of the current council has reached a pretty high point. And it feels like there is a lot of politicking that goes on between them. We've spoken with other candidates and other members of the community, and together about the idea that there's these words that are used to describe a counselor versus a counselor's idea that some members choose to use, that in political parlance is not legal, but is allowed and considered, ethical or above board, but is really just a word masking a much worse word that's attacking the character of the person. And one of the things that I'd like to see, as someone who doesn't have a dog in this fight beyond wanting to see the best Calgary we can, be, and of course being, friends with Jacob, that is something that I would want to see is less attacking of a character, and more counterpoints to the ideas that are brought up. And I just think that unfortunately, with the length of time that some of these counselors have been on, they're losing sight of that. That's how at least I feel personally. I can't speak for Jacob.
I for one think that some of the attack articles and some of the words in the press posted towards not only Drew Farrell but other candidates, especially female ones, is atrocious, and it's something in politics that we need to correct as a people and
as a society. Yeah,
as a society. And it's disparaging to see that, because of the time that she did spend on council. I mean, that's her life. That was her life.
Yes. Yeah.
Was building this city to what it is now. And you know what? We probably will never, I read this the other day in an article too, we probably will never see the true effects of the positive changes that Drew made on our city.
Right.
And
she won't get the credit for it. And even though I don't agree with her, I don't want to say managing style, but how she operated on council, I think she did a lot of great things. And to on her way out to see this is sad.
It's unfortunate at the least. Yeah.
Just to give some props to Drew, because I have lots of props to give. Some of my previous experiences on the volunteer boards with the advisory committee on accessibility and the Calgary Transit Access Eligibility Appeals Board, and she was always a major ally of the disability community, and
I bet,
made it a point to make the city as accessible as possible, and even on a couple of occasions attended our committee meetings. And trust me, we did not get a lot of that outside of the couple general managers from administration that had direct dealings with us.
Yeah.
But she was one of the few that was really an ally. So I will always appreciate that. And I was sort of disappointed. I wanted to continue to work with her on these accessibility issues, but I believe that I think I can work with whoever ends up taking that spot to move forward on these same issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think accessibility is an important issue. I have it right on my website as part of affordable housing and accessible housing in Calgary. So it's an important issue to myself as well. I have members of my family that are handicapped as well. So it hits close to home to me as well. And building an inclusive Calgary is the best thing that we can do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so on that note, one of the things that Jacob and I have spoken about is the idea that, I think the media, and I don't think that you were trying to do this, Derek, I'm not trying to point the finger by any stretch of the word, but the media does seem to be vilified but by currently as it stands in a lot of cases, and one of the things that we've talked about is the idea that the media sometimes is forced to fill in the gaps with the lack of information and lack of transparency that we've sometimes seen from and more often than I think Jacob would like to see, and definitely I would like to see from council in closed camera sessions. So the idea being that this lack of transparency, I mean, the media is going to do what the media does, which is to write stories in order to sell papers, or in order to, that's old school, but the media is going to do what the media does, and it's I don't try to give them an excuse or an out, but it's the idea that yes, they're going to do that, and if you leave an important issue, if there are these closed door secret meetings, your entities are going to kind of fill in the blanks to try and engage readers. It's not always the right thing to do. It's not always done well, unfortunately, but it's a real thing. What is your kind of view on these closed camera sessions, and do you think that it kind of lends to an even greater cynicism to within the communities of people going, well, like I feel like I'm not even on the same page as the people who I've elected to help run my city or the city I live in?
Yeah, no, I think that there should be as many on-camera or open door meetings as possible. I know it's not always a reality when there's privacy concerns and other issues like that.
Yep.
But I mean, we're in the age of information at the touch of our fingertips, and I don't think that council can sit back and say, hey, you know what, like, you guys aren't ready for this now. I know Calgarians have the right to the truth. They can handle the truth, and they deserve the truth about everything that is allowed and permissible to be on camera.
Absolutely.
I'm very pleased to hear that, and that seems to be a growing opinion, because we don't want these information gaps, because then that just causes controversy where there doesn't need to be. Sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sows dissent, right? Like it sows this bitterness amongst communities where they feel like they're left in the lurch or left in the dark. And again, in a place where we're trying to create more connection and right to your great point there, Derek, in this age of information, we need to, we have the ability to show that transparency. Why don't we? Now, we've spoken with, and I believe, correct me, Jacob, or fill me in, Jacob, which candidate were we speaking to that kind of made the good point that yes, there are certain things where these meetings are required, whereas they're talking about private information or negotiations that are best done or better done in a closed door setting for the sake of the deal and for both parties involved.
It was several, but most recently, Lauren Herschel and Mike LaValle.
Thank you. Yes. And again, I think that we can all agree that is reasonable and understandable. But I also think that and we've talked about this with other counselors as well, and Derek, I would assume you feel the same way, but the other, I should say, candidates as well. But the idea that it's not difficult to explain as to why that meeting was made as much as you can give without compromising the actual closed doorness of that meeting, for lack of a better term, but giving an explanation as to why this portion of the session was on camera. That it's not difficult to kind of just say, hey, there were some issues that involve private information or a negotiation that we deem is and it has been deemed to be best done in a closed door setting. Therefore, we went on camera for this session, for this part of the session. Is that, would you agree that would in and of itself be so much more helpful and conducive?
To a point, because if there's a reason for it to not be on camera, if you give a little hint of it, someone's going to dig it up, and that information is
fair
more likely
enough.
to become public. So
Fair.
I see the other
Fair.
side of the
The
argument
coin.
there. Yeah, and it needs to, if council deems that it's inappropriate to be on live camera or open door session, whatever it is, then it's
Probably
inappropriate.
inappropriate to bring it up at all.
Yeah.
Not to cut you off, but yeah, absolutely. No, and that's a fair point. And that's a fresh take. And this is why we bring it up with almost every candidate, is that, yeah, that's totally fair. If there's even a snip of something that can be written about, or talked about or brought up, then it will be sought after, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, interesting. Jacob, do you feel the same way?
Now that perspective's been brought up, and I'll be honest with you, Derek, it hadn't been yet.
Yeah, it hadn't been. That's what I'm saying.
Black and white sort of opinions on this.
Well,
I do see how that little bit of explanation lends itself
Bites.
to give an inch, take a mile sort of outcomes.
Well, if I'm telling you, hey, I'm going into the witness protection program,
But I'm not telling you why.
Yeah. you're gonna wonder why, right? And you're gonna
Of
start
course.
Googling me, like, what happened around
For
there? Why is he
sure.
going into witness protection?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
story here? What's the scoop?
Yeah.
So
It's 100% fair. Yeah, that's a
You just-
very fair point.
you just need to disappear, right?
Yeah. And then
You just
So-
need to go.
as we've started doing in the last couple episodes, I'm gonna ask you something a bit on the lighter side. And you've sort of alluded to something I think you might touch on, but what's something that you really love about your ward? Maybe a hidden gem, maybe something you just love to do, parks, a particular spot. Just what's something you really love in Ward 7?
You know what? I moved to Ward 7 because it was so close to the river, honestly.
Nice.
I think the more people that have access to our river and our other bodies of water, the happier our families can be. I mean, just taking the dog down to the water, or the kids just dropping the fishing line in the middle of the river. Whatever it is, it's
So nice.
you're having a stressful day. You need to get down by that river and just take a load off, lay in the rocks, lay in the sand, lay in the grass, whatever it is. Just really getting out by the water's kind of the biggest reason I moved here. I know it might sound
Well-
cheesy, but
No. That's hey man, when you've got a family, that's a real thing. Absolutely. You look at the quality of life you can provide for that family and the experiences that they'll have, and the environment that they'll be around. So no, man, that's not cheesy at all. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And
that
I
you guys-
can
that you made
I
that
can
change.
especially see that with the weather we've been having recently, where
Yeah.
being
Oh,
down
yeah.
by the river would be just an excellent time.
yeah, I mean, it's easy for me. Like, I live so close to the river, like just drop the raft in the river, float it down, come out at Eau Claire, and hitch a ride home with a buddy or something like that, or whatever it is. It's so easy. And I mean, that's kind of what we all dream about, is having that recreational recreational area like right around our communities. And then I think the river does a lot of that for a lot of people, even if you're just biking or running. I mean, I bike all the time, and just ripping on either side of the river. I usually go over the train tracks on the far side of the river on the south bank, and I rip it all the way down to Crow Child, or even into over to the Peace Bridge there, and whip back. Sometimes take the dog out there. She's usually tired as heck by the time we get back, but I mean, it's yeah.
And
Just
That's awesome.
and we were just mentioning last episode that not everybody thinks of Calgary as like this picturesque, beautiful place, but it really can be.
they don't.
Yeah.
I know some people that think of, and a lot of them don't live here, so that's probably a big factor. But if you talk to somebody from, say, out of province or out of town, a lot of them will assume it's like this industrial center, and there's nothing really picturesque or beautiful about it, and there really is.
I think we have an extremely beautiful city, and I think people are shocked when they do come here at how beautiful our scenery of the mountains, and just how we have some of the biggest parks inside our city limits. And you know what, even our downtown surprises people, especially people coming up from the US. They're like, holy smokes, you guys got like a real downtown up here,
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
And I would argue that, depending on the city they come from, it's probably much bigger than their downtown, because our downtown commercial core is quite the sight, for a city of only like 1.4 million people.
1.2. Yeah, I was about to say 1.3, 1.4. Yeah, exactly. It is, and it is. I agree. I too, like Jacob. I mean, I have friends inside the city, unfortunately, and I'm sure you guys are going to ask, why are they your friends? But I have some friends in the city who, I don't know if they're not, from my understanding, they're not exploring the right sides of Calgary. Maybe it's just the growing cynicism of restrictions. But the idea that like, oh man, Calgary just it's all right. And I'm like, what do you mean it's all right? Like, are you kidding me right now? What's all right about it? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I guess there's a lot of green spaces, but it's not that. It's not that pretty. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, okay, if you're going out in the middle of November when everything's yellow and there's everywhere, like, yeah, okay, it might not look the best, but like, you're telling me in the middle of May or in the summer when you're walking around these green spaces, it's gorgeous. It's so lush. Like, we're so lucky to have the green spaces that we do have. And so, but it is interesting that, I think I'm hoping that with COVID and with, if there's ever some sort of silver lining, I don't think there is, but if we had to pick one, it's that people got to explore their city a little bit more. And now that we're into the second summer, where vaccines are available, I'm really hoping that we take this time to explore Calgary, invest in the local business and really take a look at kind of the hidden gems that, might change and will definitely change your opinion of or anyone's opinion of saying Calgary is okay to Calgary is that picturesque, gorgeous city.
Yeah, well, if we could only get our infrastructure projects off the ground, revitalize downtown, they might have a different take on that.
I know a couple potential council members that I'll put you in touch with who might get that done.
Fantastic. Hey, you know what? I think we should actually mention that you're talking about summertime and fall being kind of more of a drab thing. I think we should really embrace our winter city persona and dive into it a little further. I mean, we could host events downtown that really celebrate our winter culture here in Calgary. I mean, we hosted the '88 Winter Olympics. We almost hosted the 2024 Olympics. I mean,
2026.
Sorry, yeah. We are a winter city, and I don't think we do enough to really celebrate that. So I think we should host some more winter events.
You mean zoo lights isn't enough?
Yeah. Well, and I am gonna toot my own horn here. I have always wondered why on earth we as a city have not picked up the phone and called Red Bull for their ice challenges that they set up. They're
in Montreal, right?
Yeah, and so I go, God, come over here. We've got space here, man. Like, Montreal is a very cool. You guys know. I mean, I can't speak for you, Derek, but Jacob and I have some roots that go back there, and they do not have a lot of space, right? Like, it's very dense in population, and they make it work. And it blows my mind that we have not attracted that here to Calgary, like you said, because of our notoriety as a winter city.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure if it has anything to do with elevation. Our downtown is extremely flat. That might be
true.
A thing.
I hadn't thought of that.
Right. But even, I mean, put it at Nose Hill. No, I'm just joking. But there's I'm sure there's somewhere, even if it's at COP, for God's sake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, wind sport. Sorry, I'm an old. That's what am I talking about?
Yeah,
wind
I call
sport,
it COP usually too. Don't worry about
it. But again, I agree with you, Derek. Again, not to get away from your point, absolutely. We unfortunately all cringe and scoff and moan about the winter, when the reality is we really should embrace it and make it part of our economy and make more part of our economy, I should say, and bring in more events. Absolutely, especially in the downtown revitalization. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's going to be it'll be an important factor, in motivating people to come out and, use public transit to get downtown and put up tents for people to warm up and have hot chocolate and host events and stuff like that. So I think it's an idea for the next era.
Absolutely.
Well, and on this whole idea of our winter legacy, it's absolutely terrible to me that, and this is up back in my ward and like Ward 2 and such, but the fact that the bobsled track at a wind sport had to close is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, I'm not sure as to all the reasons why myself. I haven't looked into it too much, but it is unfortunate, as well as the ski jumping, that people can no longer ski jump at Windsport either. Even the national team has to go to Whistler to ski jump as well now.
What? I did not hear that. I'll have to take a look at that. That's really frustrating.
Our ski jump is no longer up to Olympic standard, and part of the Olympic bid would have been to renovate that, but because we didn't get the funds from that, these things had to close down.
That's really too bad.
Yeah, it is.
Interesting. Well, no, that's again, going back, winter sports definitely need, winter events we definitely need to get more of, and I think Calgary is being seen more as, I think will continue to be seen more as people explore as a picturesque city. And so on that note, I meant to ask you, were you born and raised, Derek, in Calgary?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Calgary, 100%.
Amazing.
I lived in Vancouver for a couple years right during the Olympics in Vancouver. So
awesome.
I know I got a real sense of, how a thriving, vibrant, downtown feels and that sort of thing. I mean, they don't maybe not have the best sense of community down there, because it seems like no one that lives in downtown Vancouver is from Vancouver. So
right.
But that's the kind of the goal we want to emulate is, people being able to go out 7 days a week, morning, noon, and night to, get things accomplished in our downtown and be excited to be down there, take the trains down there for events and social gatherings and concerts and that sort of stuff. I mean, with that event center, I mean, we won't have to travel to Edmonton anymore to go see, our favorite artists. We'll hopefully be able to see them in our own back door. So
absolutely.
Well, the fact that events are skipping Calgary because the Saddle Dome is only up to code for 1983 events is, again, this is something we shouldn't have to be talking about.
Jacob, what's your thought on the event center?
I as much as I talk about the whole idea of fiscal responsibility that you've noticed I've mentioned several times, I will admit I'm extremely pro event center. Some of my best memories living in Calgary are stuff I went to at the Dome, and I'm a Flame season ticket holder, so I think it's absolutely part of like us being a thriving city.
Nope, I have to agree. You know what? I'd like to pride myself on being a fiscal conservative as well. Deep down, I do support some big projects in our city's future, but the time is now to build for the city of the future. And I think with the proper, execution and a redevelopment of that entire area, including some of the Stampede grounds there, that, if the communities of Calgary can get behind, a sports and entertainment district, then it's one of the best things that can happen to this city, and it can really be an engine for revitalization. The one thing I do want to say though is I'm surprised that there hasn't been, like a major private partner announced for the event center deal, like a hotel or like a developer.
That would have been helpful, I think.
But Jacob, isn't technically the private, I mean, I guess they're not really considered private, but weren't you saying, Jacob, that the Calgary Stampede Group? I mean, are they considered private?
And CMLC are part of the project, but there's no real private partner as far as like
Oh, I see.
the
A private
hotels
entity,
around the arena or the
or like Cowboys Casino or something, or like
like naming rights potentially as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big thing for Calgarians to know that it's more than just a hockey rink. You know, it's more than just for players that get paid millions of dollars to go skate on ice there. It's a hub for local artists to go and you know, to get their music out there, and you know, for business owners to open up businesses and thrive during events, and for us to see the biggest concerts and shows. I mean, hopefully we get to see, you know, some big names like my favorite, you know, Drake and Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully they get to come
some T-Swift.
Get some
Yeah,
T-Swift.
that's the big argument you hear against it, right? Is it's only a hockey arena. It's a project for millionaires. There's no public benefit, and that's just not accurate.
Just
What
not true.
do you say to people that are against the arena deal, Jacob?
I always talk about, well, in addition to myself having some of my best experiences at the sporting events, I always mention the concerts, the Stampede exhibition events. I went to see Amy Schumer at the Saddle Dome back a few years ago. So
right.
And if you execute this properly, say we take a look at, like you said, Edmonton's probably the closest one. But if you look at Vegas, if you look at Arizona, their event centers, their arenas are the hubs of and districts where there's just so much to do. Mm-hmm. So if you do it properly, then you end up with an economic driver.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, you look at even, you know, Edmonton. I mean, I know we touched on that, but it's just gorgeous and it makes sense, right? The amenities that are there, it is such a, and we were talking about this with another candidate, it's just unbelievable. It's sad, unfortunately, how stratified it is. In that area of Edmonton, and downtown Edmonton can be quite stratified in terms of the population. But beyond that, when you get into the sphere of or into the geography, or you get very close to that event center, you can feel it. It's a change of energy. You can almost, as you get closer, like it's exactly what I think we need to emulate here in Calgary, and what will, I think, tie together this downtown revitalization plan and what we talked about earlier, Derek, the idea of attracting business, because Calgary is such a business-friendly city. I think adding that world-class event center, and again, the hope being eventually potentially transit through the way of some sort of line from downtown to that event center, will be an absolute economic driver.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm 100% in agreement. And I typically wouldn't be for an arena deal such as this, but I think the bigger picture is what I hope that other Calgarians see, like I did, that it makes sense for the future of our city to invest now in revitalizing that area and making it for the people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I was going to say, Jacob, what's next on the hot buttons?
Well, I think we've covered most of the issues that we're all gonna have to talk about a million times until October. So I'm gonna ask Derek what I've asked the last few guests we've had. if you wanted to give one message about your campaign and about what you want to see Calgary become, what would that be?
Just one, Jacob?
I love that.
Well, yeah, obviously we got lots to say about the future, but yeah, just one.
Jacob, I come from the hospitality industry, and what I bring to the table is a level of service that I know Calgarians are that what they expect from when they visit our fine establishments, and I hope to bring that level of service back to Calgarians on council. I think that I want to be really active in communities, engaging people on various levels to really hear their voices and be of service to Calgarians and really show them what leadership can look like in the service of Calgarians.
I completely appreciate that, Derek, because one of the big things I say to people is I look at this whole process as a long, media intense sort of job interview. I want to be the best to represent you, to serve you, to listen to you, and to make your life better. And trying to get a job where I represent the interests of so many people, my friends and neighbors, and it's really important to me.
I agree, and I applaud you for your run, Jacob. I know myself, it's not easy, and it's taken its twists and turns along the way, and it's been a little bit different than I had always anticipated, especially with COVID and everything. But
oh yeah, we had to stop canvassing for the shutdown because I just didn't feel right about that.
What have you seen on the doors, Jacob? Have you seen people?
Well, there's definitely an appetite for change. I think there is a level of mistrust with the current council. I think a lot of that is born out of just how political not only council has gotten, but just society in general over the last few years. But there's also this aspiration that we can do better, and I totally believe in that.
That's great to hear.
How about you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, our wards are definitely a little bit different than one another, but I think a lot of people in my ward have a lot of like I said before, engagement issues. They don't feel like they've been heard, and there's a lot of revitalization in our neighborhoods, and people just want to see it done the right way, and they want their voices heard.
I think that's very much a common thread, is wanting to be heard again.
And I think you gentlemen are right in the alley of doing that.
Yeah, I think so.
And then, so from that, I think it's just about time to wrap things up. So I will just say, as usual, that it's important that this is a conversation. So if you have any questions for us or questions you want us to ask future guests, feel free to reach out to me on social media at Jacob for Ward 1 or on my website at jacobforward1.ca. And Derek, if you want to plug your website real quick too.
Yeah, it's ward7derek.ca. You can find me online. It's Derek Williams for Ward 7. And then on Instagram, you can follow my adventures at Ward7Derek as well.
So just remember, everybody, the faster we get vaccinated, the faster we get back out there, and I can see all of you in person, and we can get back to life that looks a lot more like it did before March 2020. So everybody get your shots. It's about 5 months to the election on October 18th, so go out and vote. And Jason, do you want to add anything?
Not at all. You've summed it up great. Jacob, thank you so much, Derek, for coming on and for talking with us. It was awesome having you, man. And good luck, in your ward. I'm sure you would do incredible things should you be elected. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. And good luck to you, Jacob, as well. And Jason, thanks for having me on as well.
And that's what's going on in your neck of the woods for another episode.